Hello everyone, welcome to the video, and I hope you guys enjoy. Relax, and let's get started. I was in kindergarten when my pregnant mother and I moved into a new house. On one side of the house, there was an old warehouse, on the other side, a slightly rundown home with some slightly shady people living there. I was told to stay away for a good reason, as it turned out. We came home on more than one occasion and found the attic door open, which was in my mother's closet, as well as things being slightly rearranged. Of course, my mother was disturbed. As my bedroom faced the warehouse, it was not lighted outside. My mother's bedroom was from the streetlights. I kept hearing strange noises outside my window, and after a few times refusing to sleep in my own bedroom, she decided to sit in a chair in front of the large window in my bedroom, which had sheer curtains. One night, while looking out, coffee in hand, she heard the same noise I heard before. To her horror, it was one of the neighbors next door. When he saw her watching back at him, he took off after giving her a smile. That very same night, he stabbed and mutilated a woman at a laundromat just half a block from our home. Needless to say, we were out of the house that very night. Thankfully, he is still in prison and will be in there for the rest of his life. Let's not meet, ever. My first experience with the Ouija board was at a friend's house. I was there with my best friend and her boyfriend at the time. My best friend, we'll call her Jessica, had grown up in the house, which was notoriously haunted. The women who lived there would wake up with scratches on their backs. They would routinely see the ghost of a little boy. Crazy shit all the damn time. Anyway, Jessica's childhood friend moved in there when the family moved out. We were there for the housewarming party. Jessica's friend had a board. Jessica and I are both pretty spiritual, and neither of us wanted to touch it. Nothing was happening, so Chuck convinced us to do it, saying we were witchy. As soon as we touched it, the cursor started moving, and at first it was a little boy. Jessica and I looked at each other like, oh fuck. Both of us knowing about the little boy in the house, suddenly Chuck was like, oh man, did you guys feel that? We felt it. The air became thick, like hard to breathe. He described exactly what I felt. It was almost like the air was thick fog and mist, but it was also dry. The board started spelling things like slut, fuck, her, cheater, bitch, fuck you, he fucked her. The cursor was moving more rapidly with every word. Finally, Jessica was like, okay, stop, and the pointer stopped dead in its tracks. It stopped too abruptly that my hand slipped off, and when I touched it again, it slowly dragged to the bottom of the board, ending on goodbye. Months later, I was crashing at a friend's place, K&J. They had a basement apartment, and I was crashing on their couch. The guys invited over some girls I didn't know, and they wanted to try using the Ouija board. I didn't want to touch it, but it wasn't working, so finally I gave in and decided to try it. As soon as I touched it, the pointer started to move. I was touching the pointer with my friend Kay. The cursor was moving really slow, so as a game, I said, move faster, and it started moving quickly. I kept saying faster, and eventually it was moving so fast. My friend touching the cursor was saying, this isn't funny, as if I was moving it. I said I wasn't moving it, and he freaked out, releasing the board, and the pointer went shooting across the room. At the point, we were all pretty convinced it was real. One of the girls wanted to see more, so we grabbed the cursor and tried again. So then the board asked to speak to a girl named Haley. The board said, family, father, and proceeds to spell out her dad's name. She starts freaking out. The board says it's sorry about her dad, and that her dad is a drug addict and her mom is a drunk. It says she has to leave her house because her dad is angry. Haley starts crying and freaking out. The board says goodbye. We get back to the apartment and Haley is crying. She tells us that her dad is a coke dealer and her mom is a drunk. All the time. Her home life is awful. Her dad would frequently get drunk and coked up and hit her. She was only 16 or 17 at the time. K&J said that she can stay there at their place too. Interestingly, months later, Haley's mom dropped her off at the apartment complex, and she told Haley that her great-grandfather helped build the place. She said he lived here his whole life and died there. After that night, I started reading about Ouija boards. A couple nights later, I went to visit my best friend and her boyfriend at his place, which was walking distance to my apartment. I told them about the whole thing. He says he wants to try it too. Reluctantly, Jessica and I agreed. Keep in mind, we are all even drinking whiskey that night. Yes, I know this is altogether an awful idea. The cursor starts spelling trees, broken glass, and suddenly it starts getting violent, spelling out rape and fuck her teeth. Jessica and I tell it to stop, and we say goodbye. The cursor drags to goodbye. We put the board away. Suddenly Chuck is like, "Oh shit, dude, you're not walking home." He then explains his interpretation of what the board was saying. On my walk to my friend's place, like I said, they lived in a basement apartment. So instead of walking through the halls, we'd just go to the living room window and climb in. To get to the window, I would cut through a back clearing where there were tall trees all over. He convinced me that there were bad guys in there, and on that night, and if I walked home, I would get raped, hence the fucker teeth shit. Needless to say that after the visual, I stayed over. The next morning when I walked through the clearing, there were broken glass bottles all over the place, and my friend said that they heard people drinking out there all night. Anyway, I moved out and Haley and I became friends. Kay brought the board over as a housewarming gift. One day, my cousin came over to my apartment with her boyfriend at the time. Her boyfriend noticed the board in the corner. He asked me about it, and I laugh and tell him about the whole story. His eyes get all wide, and he asked if we can play with it. Being kind of stoned, I agree, and we start asking questions. The pointer starts spelling Jessica's name, and we all get in the car and head over to her place. She's not home, but Chuck is. I left the board in the car with my cousin and her boyfriend and go to talk to Chuck. He said Jessica was at work until 9 that night, but we can come in and wait for her. After the last incident, he was interested to see what was going to happen. When I got to my car, my cousin and her boyfriend said they heard fingers tapping as if something were waiting impatiently for him to get back. We sat around waiting for a while, and Chuck brings out his own board from the last time I was over. We use it and it says Jessica, Jessica, and pointing to no, then to the sun in the corner of the board, over and over, no sun, no sun. Eventually I figured out what it was saying, no light. I asked if it wanted me to shut off the light, and I said no, we're not going to do that. I have read that bad spirits do not like the light. Finally, when Jessica got home, she said that she was too tired and didn't want to try using it. We agreed to leave it alone and brought it back to my house. I didn't like having it in my house, so the next time I went to visit Haley at K&J's place, I brought it back. She said she wanted to try it one more time and that we would get rid of it. I agreed. At this point, I was clearly addicted to see what was going to happen. So Haley and I are at the basement apartment climbing out the window for cigarettes near the back clearing with the trees. We go back in to use the board. The board starts spelling out Haley's name, and this time the spirit says its name is Maria. Haley immediately started to cry and say, "That's not funny." I had no idea why or what she was going on about, but the board kept going. It says, "Tell them I miss them. Tell them I love them. I'm here. I love them." As Haley is crying, she explains that her best friend's mom, Maria, had died a year ago. I remember the death. It was a big news all over our high school. Suddenly, the cursor moved and spelled my name. I asked who it was, and the cursor spelled Deb. I read that bad spirits cannot tell their names because they do not have one. If a spirit can tell the name, then it usually is a good one. I asked how I know her, and she says she's my spirit guide. Haley says, "How do we know you're real?" And the cursor spells cigarette. And I said, "What do you mean?" And it says window. We look at each other and our hearts sink. I'm like, she knows that we smoke outside? I said, "How will we know?" And she said, "Trees." I'm like, fuck that, and Haley says we have to do it. So we're smoking outside. I'm looking into the forest, sweating balls in fear, thinking I'm going to see a fucking demon face in the branches or something. Eventually, we relax, but then Haley, mid-sentence, her face drops and goes white, and she says, fuck, 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 get inside now. I fucking toss my cigarette, jump in the window. We close the blinds and we're breathing super heavy. I'm like, what the fuck happened? She says that behind me in the distance there was a big-ass 100-foot tall tree. There was no wind. I remember this because I was watching my cigarette smoke go directly up and I was blowing perfect O's without them disappearing. She says the tree still, then suddenly the whole tree, including the trunk, back and forth, then went back to perfectly still. I was like, hell no, and after a while freaking out, sat back at the board when we put our fingers on it and it said, "Did you see?" We fucking freaked out. It was spelling, "It's okay, I love you, it's okay, don't be scared." Finally, it asked to speak to only me and for Haley to go away. Haley jokingly said, "Aw, you don't like me?" And the board said, "Don't be sad." The story really closes weakly here because nothing really came of it. I tried to talk to her on my own, just nothing happened. I needed Haley in order to make it actually move. I kind of wonder if Deb was just trying to get me off the board. I guess I'll never really know. I hope you guys enjoyed my story. Super intense Ouija board shit. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I'm sorry that second story kind of ended abruptly, but I was reading it 10 minutes in and didn't even realize that I had left it, so I just continued to read it. Well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. There was no bloopers because I actually could read today. Anyway, you guys have a really good day, and peace out.